If you've ever said, I shouldn't require a bunch of context to appreciate the art, I should be able to appreciate the art just by looking at it, this video is for you. Hi, welcome to my series, Modern Art for Haters, the show where I talk to you about art and you don't have to like any of it. And welcome to part 2 of our lesson about how to look at art. Now, we ended lesson 1 with a highly conceptual work of art called Perfect Lovers by Felix Gonzalez Torres. And something you may have noticed is that when we were looking at that work of art, we did not have to spend a lot of time talking about how he made it. Because what he did was stick 2 clocks together, which is wildly simple. But I want you to consider something. When we looked at this, Life of a Memory, the first thing we thought about was how it was made. The hand dyeing process, the composition, the balance. There's a lot of technical things that we noticed before we even thought about what the art meant. With Perfect Lovers, there's none of that technique to unpack. It's 2 clocks put together. You immediately jump to thinking about the concept, which is what the artist wants you to do. So sometimes an artwork being very technically and visually simple is the way of the artist getting you to focus on the concepts and nothing else. Even in artwork so simple, the concept is actually very, very deep. You can see in part 1 of this lesson that this concept is very deep. So deep that some people might cry when they talk about it. Now, the good news about looking at art that requires context is that it's optional. Sometimes I'll come across art that's just like a little bit too conceptual, a little bit too confusing, and I'll just go, not today. But sometimes that also makes you part of the art. We're gonna look at one more work by Felix Gonzalez Torres. This one. This is a pile of candy. Colorful candy, shiny candy, but it's just candy. How did they make it? They put it in a pile. Technical analysis done. Now, somewhere next to this pile of candy is a sign that says that you can take a piece of candy, which means if you think about it, this pile of candy is going to start shrinking over time. Great, but what does a shrinking pile of candy mean? Besides people getting free candy. You could look for a placard or a pamphlet. You don't have to do that because I'm just going to tell you. This piece is called Portrait of Ross in LA. And you might know from my last video that Ross is the name of Felix's partner, who was diagnosed with AIDS in 1987 and died in 1991 when this artwork came out. How does a shrinking pile of candy represent a lover who's dying of AIDS? Imagine someone beautiful and sweet wasting away before your eyes. Imagine how helpless you'd feel to watch that. That's how it's a portrait of Ross. Now let me ask you something. If you know this pile of candy is meant to represent someone wasting away from a horrible disease, someone who is deeply, deeply loved by the artist, would you think twice before taking a piece of candy? Because I've never seen this in person before, but I think I would. But if we all did that, then it would lose a lot of its symbolism. Most of the time when this piece is displayed, the most obvious sign is not the one telling the context of the artwork. It's the one telling people to take a piece of candy. Because if you don't know what the artwork is about, you see a beautiful pile of candy and you get to take a piece, which is nice. But if you do know what this artwork is about, then you're sitting there helplessly watching this pile waste away and watching not many people care. Which in the 80s and 90s is how a lot of loved ones of AIDS patients felt, which was the point of the piece all along. So if you still want to say, I don't like art that needs context, I just want to look at art that's pretty, you are allowed to prefer that. And if you come across highly conceptual art and you go, not today, that's okay sometimes. But I want to remind you that sometimes knowing the context is worth it. And it takes a piece of art from being something very simple to being something very profound. And now, hopefully, if you want to, you can appreciate art like that.